Right. Hello and welcome to Awkward Family Conversations, where we try to help millennials and Zoomers figure out life. I'm here with my dad, Rhett. Fun rock trivia. He's mentioned before on this podcast that I had lots of little critters that would stay with us for some times growing up. And what he did not mention was that he does not like little critters, but they love him. Many of the guinea pigs, if he would so much as walk past the room, they would start doing the little excitable squeak that they do. But he was not interested at all. Hi, Dad.
Hi, Ed. It's funny you mentioned that. I was going to talk about all of the critters that you fostered through the years and named. Yeah, so I think we've talked about your Lindsay wildlife experience.
Yeah.
Where you would bring home various animals, but yeah, you were bringing home animals, whether they were the class pet or the class whatever, for a very long time. I'm not sorry to say that we haven't had any since you've left home. So hello, Ed.
This is a whole dog.
What's that?
You got a whole dog when I left home.
Yes, and we still have a dog, although a different one, I think. So anyway, hello, Ed. Let me introduce my daughter, Addie. She is my younger daughter of 2. And as we've already talked about, as a veterinary assistant, it probably pips that you're into animals. And goodness me, you've always been into animals. I'm trying to remember, there was a time when you had a hamster and you had him running around in the, you'd make a fence with your legs and let him run around in the middle. And then you'd put him in your sweatshirt pocket and carry him around that way. I was always very nervous that they were going to get loose because when I was growing up, your Aunt Susan used to have little critters like that. She had chameleons as well as hamsters and gerbils and the like, and they would get loose. And I spent one very long night chasing one around my room trying to get it cornered. And finally got it into my closet and closed the doors, but they were the swinging closet doors, so I had to stuff a bunch of file folders, or they were my old file folders in the gap, so the hamster couldn't escape. And as a result, the hamster shredded my schoolwork. That's the reason I'm not really a big fan of the little critters.
Sure is.
Had to grow up that way. Anyway, what's our topic for today, Ed?
Our topic today is, look how cute my cat is. Do you see this business?
That's our topic every day when we talk to you.
That's true. But our topic for our podcast today is, what should I do when things go wrong at work?
Well, as someone who has much experience with this sort of thing, I think I can be of service. What's the biggest thing that's ever gone wrong for you at work?
Probably when we gave the wrong patient the wrong pre-med. So he got too high of a dose of one of the controlled drugs, which was not good. Fortunately, it was a tiny amount too high, so we were able to just monitor, and then everything went fine. But yeah, that was a scary moment because that could have been really, really bad.
Yeah, I think when you're dealing with in healthcare where you have things that could be potentially life-threatening, whether they're animals or people, that's a much higher risk than it is if you're, in a marketing group or something like that, where maybe the message gets a little muddled or goes out incorrectly or out at the wrong time. So, yeah, in my career, I'm, 35 plus years of working experience. There's been a lot of things I've seen that goes wrong. Doing our 2 minutes of internet research this week, I have to give thanks to success.com and forbes.com for giving some interesting reading materials that will help inform our conversation here. And I think, when you think about how things go wrong, I think there's kind of 2 general, very broad categories of things that go wrong. One are sort of specific instances, and those could be an example of a failure of a process or procedure, a mistake made by somebody, whether it's just an oversight or because you're coming up a learning curve. But there's, those are, and not minimizing them, but they're limited. I mean, they happen once, and it's about, kind of one thing. and those, those can be very traumatic, and they can be very costly. And, again, don't want to trivialize them, but they're actually easier to deal with than the second category of when things go wrong at work. And those are larger organizational or cultural or, just much bigger issues that tend not to happen, once suddenly. Maybe you become aware of these things over time. But I think those are, generally it's kind of the single instance limited, in terms of time. And then there's these bigger organizational things that cause things to go wrong again and again and again. But maybe not quite so, it's much harder to deal with those kind of things. And then I think when you ask the question, what do I do when things go wrong at work? You got to answer it with two time frames in mind. The first is kind of the short term, what do we do right now? And then the longer term questions. Once you kind of get through the short term crisis, then the longer term questions, okay, how do we not have this happen again? Because it's typically not very pleasant to go through a difficult, jarring mistake. It's not the kind of thing you really want to make a habit of if you could avoid it. And so the way you avoid it is by, kind of taking a long-term view and saying, okay, what can we do so that doesn't happen again? So, so it kind of, you got to kind of get through the moment, get through the crisis, and then figure out how it doesn't happen again. Does that make sense?
Sure does.
Excellent.
All right. Well then, how do I come up the learning curve without feeling like a failure? Because obviously you make a bunch of mistakes in the beginning, so.
Yeah, things go wrong. Usually when you first start anything, things are going to go wrong. And most of the time they're expected. And oftentimes they're, fairly minor, because again, they're not going to put you in charge of something or make you do something that your company or organization doesn't feel that you're able to handle. But that can really undermine your self-confidence and your self-esteem and kind of make you feel like, oh, I'm really screwing up. And, probably, the first thing that you want to think about, or the first thing you want to do when something goes wrong because you're new in a job, you're making a mistake, not because you had an oversight or, kind of your brain locked up or whatever, but because you're just new and it's the first time you're going through anything. Recognize, first of all, just be kind to yourself. Rome wasn't built in a day. You're never going to be perfect. And when you're just learning to do something, you should expect that you are going to make some mistakes, and hopefully they won't be traumatic and dramatic, high impact kind of errors. And if it is, that's partly the responsibility of your managers, the people that are leading you. You shouldn't be in a position where you can make a mistake that causes a tremendous amount of damage. But, sometimes things happen. Sometimes they don't have the luxury of being able to pick, you might be down resources, might be down people. You may not have anybody who's any better at it than you are. And that's the other thing to think about is, you might have made a mistake because, you were the only one that they had to put against it. And, even though you weren't the right person, there was nobody else there either. So kind of keep that in mind too. I think some of the other things you do is just look to past successes. You've been successful in the past and recognize that you're not incompetent. I mean, a lot of when you're coming up the learning curve stuff is about, hey, be kind to yourself, believe in yourself. You're going to get there. You're just going to make some mistakes along the way, and give yourself the grace and the space to be able to, to make errors and not feel like you're a terrible employee or a terrible person, or somebody who's just a boob and can't do anything right. You're not. You're in a position because they think that you can do the job. You've had success in the past, so look to that to help your confidence stay high. Recognize that tough times don't last forever. You will, as you learn, you're going to get better, and you'll feel better about it because you'll feel more competent. Take it just, like anything, when you make a mistake, look to what you can control. Can you fix the mistake right now? Something that you can do? Can you make it better somehow? What specific things can you do to countermand the error or the mistake or the problem? And ask for help. I mean, that's the other thing. When you're coming up a learning curve, you should have somebody, a mentor, a coach, somebody, train you and, take advantage of that. Just, if you screw up and you make a mistake that creates an issue, if something goes wrong, raise your hand and say, hey, I think I screwed this up. How can I get out of this? How can I fix it? And how can I learn not to do it again? So, don't again, and we've talked about this in relationships and everything else. You're not on an island. You're not all by yourself in this world. And people typically want to help you. So ask for it. Ask for what you need. And probably the last thing is just keep perspective. Remember, ask yourself in 5 years, is anybody but me really going to remember this? Is this an impact that's going to be felt, kind of on an ongoing basis? Or once we fix it and it's done, is it kind of water under the bridge and nobody's ever going to really think about it again? So, the learning curve is one of those specific instances. When something goes wrong, it's either because somebody did something wrong or there was a process failure, or there was just circumstances, kind of created a break. And so, the circumstances stuff, there's not much you can do about it. If it's a process break, we'll talk about that next, I think. But if it's because you screwed up or somebody screwed up, it's because they didn't, you didn't know how to do it. Or, the other thing is that you just did it wrong. You knew better and you still did it wrong. And if that's the case, that's, we'll talk about accountability and making sure you're owning it and fixing it. But, if it's just because you don't know, you really got to just kind of cut yourself some slack on that.
Or as we like to say in vet med, nothing died.
Unless you happen to give an overdose of the pre-med
but nothing died.
Nothing died. So therefore it wasn't a total failure, right?
Exactly. I made a mistake in the controlled logs once and I was like, oh, dang it. The person who was teaching me how to do it went, nothing died. And I was like, there, it's not that big a deal.
All right. Well, that's true. Yeah. Just keep perspective, expect that you're going to make mistakes and be kind to yourself when you do, when you're learning a new job. Now, if you're a master of the job and you just screw up, then that, I think that's the kind of thing that we can talk about next if you want.
But then on a more practical sense, for like a singular problem, where do you start first?
Yeah, and this is the short term versus long term, right? I mean, the first thing you want to do when something goes wrong is fix it. Make it right. Reverse the error if you can. If you can't reverse the error, then mitigate the damage. And you see this at restaurants, right? Oh, you gave you the wrong food. Well, we'll fix that. We'll give you the right food. And because you're gonna wait, we'll comp it, or we'll comp a dessert or a drink or something. We'll try to mitigate the damage. And a lot of that mitigation is just acknowledging, hey, we screwed up, and we, the organization, failed. And then if it's you individually that failed, own that too. To say, hey, you know what, or whatever part you have of the failure, or the mistake, or whatever goes wrong, just say, you know what, that was on me. I made a mistake, and I'm sorry about that. And that I'm sorry is the next thing. Apologize. So admit it, own it, be accountable, and then apologize for it. I screwed up. Last week we talked about professionalism, meaning, there's an element of emotional distance when we talk about professionalism, right? We're not going to engage emotionally at work in the same way we do in a lot of the other aspects of our lives, because those emotions get in the way of the common goals we have as an organization to accomplish it. So we're going to try to not have those emotional connections as deeply as we have in the other parts of our lives. And in this sense, I think we can also talk about a little bit of that emotional distance being helpful, because you can own it, you can be accountable, and you can apologize without feeling, because you don't have those strong emotional connections. You can apologize and not have it be quite as devastating, maybe, as if you had screwed up a relationship, or if you'd let down a friend. And so, the apology, I think, is one that's easier to give in a professional environment, and it can be sincere, and you can be sorry that you screwed up, but it doesn't carry quite the same emotional wallop, because it's in the workplace, and those emotions aren't going to be as central to the relationships that you have. And then, you want to make things right however you can. And really a lot of this is just talking to the people who are affected by your error or the screw up or whatever went wrong, just ask them, hey, what can I do to make you feel better about this? It's really important that all the attention be on fixing the issues. And, you'll hear a lot of people talk about, hey, listen, fix the problem, don't fix blame. There'll be time to do that debrief and figure out what went wrong later. But initially, when you ask what's the most important thing to focus on first, is fix the issue and make sure it's as good as you can make it. To do that, you need everybody on, if it's something that you can do individually, great. But typically in a business, in an organization, there's more people involved. And so communication is key, whether you communicate with team members, your clients, your business partners, your managers, whoever it is, just, make sure they know what's happening, because especially when things are going wrong, and make sure that you're communicating regularly. You don't want to leave people in the dark. Everybody's going to be looking for a solution. And, make sure that communication is happening, and that means transparency. That means you're communicating everything, right? And again, that goes back to kind of that accountability, owning your part, and whether you own your part individually or in the part as a collective organization, you're going to want to be transparent, and you want to communicate extensively, so that everybody is working together toward this solution, and you're all on the same page as you're doing that. Work around issues. Don't quit. Don't freeze up. Don't go deer in the headlights and go, let somebody else handle the problem. Stay engaged, work through it. It's not always fun. In fact, these are often high pressure, unpleasant experiences when you're on the back foot trying to fix things and make things right. But, work around things. If your whole computer network goes down, don't just sort of sit there and go throw up your hands and say, I can't do anything. Start to think about, okay, how can I get this done? So, we had a situation where our computer network went down internally, but we all had, back in the day, those were Blackberries, but we had Blackberries so we could continue to work through email, right? So, it was a lot harder. It wasn't as convenient as having a full-size keyboard that we could hammer out emails, but we were able to use our mobile devices back there to kind of keep communication going and stay on top of things that we needed to work on. So, just keep trying, stay engaged, keep working. Don't throw up your hands, don't quit, and get creative. Don't get stuck, right? It's kind of like, the network's down, or gosh, we gave too much medicine to this pet or whatever. It's kind of like, okay, don't just stop and sit there and go, okay, well, I guess we'll just wait and see what happens. You've got to make you've got to proactively create the solution, make the solution work. And so, don't quit, don't get stuck, talk to everybody, be very transparent, help everybody attention on the issues. Let's get this thing fixed. And, we talked about perspective earlier, and I think it's also important to recognize that this is an opportunity to test yourself under pressure. So keep that perspective. Don't sit there and beat yourself up. Recognize that, this is part of professional growth, and the opportunity to test yourself under pressure is actually one that you want to have, because that's really where you're going to be able to separate, kind of the people that can manage in bad times and in crises from people who maybe aren't as effective in those kind of situations. And here's a situation where you can sort of get a read on what your capabilities really are. And if it turns out that, boy, you really are good at managing in a crisis, that's going to give you access to greater opportunity down the line, because that ability is going to be valued, because it's not very common. And so, appreciate this as an opportunity as well, and not just as something that's going to make you look terrible. So that's that, for when something goes wrong and it's this single instance, this limited thing, that's really what you want to hop on that, make it right, fix it, and get things back to normal, as quickly as you can. And that's kind of the way you want to do that.
All right. So then once things are back to normal, what next?
Yeah, you don't want to forget about the problem that just happened, right? You just created a whole lot of angst. There was something that went wrong, and and it was a very intense situation, but you got it fixed. You just don't say, "Hey, good, all right, let's go on." No, you want to go back and really do this is where kind of that post-game analysis comes in. It's like, okay, we've got to keep this problem from happening again. That was not fun. We managed it. We got through it. But how do we stop this? Because, we don't want to have to be in this situation again. It's, we've recognized, the problem did happen. So therefore it can happen. And we don't want to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So, debrief, do a thorough debrief on the issue. And so, if it's just your thing, still sit down and think about, okay, what really happened here and why? Let me understand, why we ended up with this screw up, why we ended up with this failure, why we ended up with this problem. Let's understand everything that happened and why, and what it was in our processes, our procedures, our people, their experiences, the market, whatever, understand everything about that we can understand about the problem, so that we can figure out, okay, this is what happened. And then once you have that, that kind of common set of information and knowledge, then you brainstorm on ideas. Okay, well, if we gave too much medicine to this pet, well, how do we stop that from happening again? And what are some of the things that we can do to either minimize or completely eliminate the chance that can happen again? And whether these are redundant safety controls, or whether they're checks that we have, or there's automation that we can do because it was somebody who wasn't available when this thing needed to happen. Whatever the thing is that was the main problem, or if you can identify several sort of break points or failure points, rework processes. Recognize, okay, we need people with this kind of knowledge and this kind of information, so we don't have this issue recur again. And then once you've kind of figured out, okay, this is the problem, this is why it happened, this is what we could do about it, then you've got to institutionalize those practices and procedures and stuff into documents, into your training materials, into your consciousness, your executive consciousness. Maybe you need to have reporting, that can read out so that you don't get surprised or blindsided by something. I mean, you want to fix those things forever going forward, and the way you do that is you institutionalize those solutions, or those revisions, those improvements into the processes, into all of the things that you have to do as an organization to run your business, so that you're not exposing yourself to that risk of that particular error, I should say, happening again. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, makes total sense. But you mentioned earlier in the very, very beginning of this, there's the two types of problems. So there's a single issue that we just discussed. What the other one was, an organizational issue. What did you mean by that?
Well, yeah, and these again are tougher to get your arms around, I think, in a lot of ways. The single issue we talked about, it's typically because something breaks, there was a mistake made, but it's an isolated, I won't say even isolated, it's an individual, contained, limited instance. And those we fix, and then we learn from them and keep them from happening again. When people say that things are going wrong at work, a lot of times that is because they feel the organization they're not aligned with the organization, right? So things that are wrong in the organization are much bigger, much more challenging, because they're a lot more complex. And so I'm thinking about, so Wells Fargo, right? A couple of years ago, they had a scandal where they were opening accounts for people that were not authorized. People were not asking to open up an account, but employees were being compensated for opening accounts. And so they just opened a bunch of ghost accounts on clients, on clients' behalf, without the client's permission or knowledge even. And so, if you're somebody who is at Wells Fargo and you're seeing this going on and you're saying, hey, something's going wrong here. This is not kosher. And this was not in the policies and procedures. These were just people who were going outside the policies and procedures and opening accounts. And it was widespread. I mean, once somebody started recognizing, oh, I can get bonus money by opening fake accounts, or opening accounts, they were real accounts. They were available to people, but they weren't being asked for. once that started going around, then a lot of other people were like, oh, well, heck, John's getting paid. I should get paid as well. And so, yeah, you end up with this environment where things are going wrong, where you're breaking policies and procedures and potentially laws. And, but it's happening broadly. That's a much bigger thing to deal with than, the production line broke down because a bearing failed and stopped the belt. And so now we've got to fix the bearing and, we have downtime while that's happening. And, and once the bearing's fixed and we have the belt running again, we're fine. We're back to normal and everything's going well. But when we have these larger scale challenges where an employee is feeling like, boy, things are going wrong here at work, and it's not because there was a specific failure point, but really because there's this larger cultural organizational issue that's that's making me feel like this is not making me feel good. That's much harder to deal with. And they're harder to deal with really because they require participation of a lot of different people to solve. And a lot of those people need, it's coming from the top. The senior leadership really needs to step in and resolve those types of widespread, broader picture issues. So these could be, you could have cultural issues, right? You could have, just kind of a cutthroat culture, and maybe you're not a great fit with that, or it's evolved that way in your team, even if the corporate culture isn't that way, but your team is behaving that way. And that's not a great fit for you. Management issues, you've got a jerk for a boss, right? That's a little tougher when, things are going wrong because the relationship with your boss isn't healthy. Your boss is giving you things to do that you don't agree with in terms of priorities or, ethics or whatever. You're not really psyched about that. Strategy issues, right? I mean, the company has decided to focus on a particular market and you don't see the same opportunity. You think that's going to be a problem. You think that's not going to lead to growth, that you're not going to have the success as an organization. So you disagree with the strategy. That can feel like it's wrong. Market issues, we've just gone through a pandemic, right? Or we're still in a pandemic. There's that scrambled an awful lot of markets. So, things like that are happening that are wrong, that you can't, these are all things that are hard for an individual to contribute in any meaningful or impactful way to solve. So, things are going wrong for sure, but there's not an easy solution. It's not like, oh, we'll replace the bearing, or gosh, we'll give another dose of medicine to offset the one we gave him, or we're just going to observe the patient and make sure that, nothing bad happens. Those are pretty straightforward, and an individual or a small group of people can, with focused effort and energy, can fix that. These larger issues where you feel more of an ennui, about things being not quite right, they feel wrong, much harder to deal with, and there's not much you can do as an individual to solve those big picture issues. And so when you do get into a situation like this and you're looking at these big picture issues and you're thinking, oh boy, so things are going wrong, but it's not a single instance that is identifiable and fixable. It's more of a larger disconnect with my values or ethics or expectations or my goals compared to compared to where I see the organization spending time, energy, resource. When it's that kind of situation, it's probably time to look for a new job. So I wouldn't say bail on it. If it's a single instance, even if it's your mistake, there's no reason to bail on a company that you're enjoying or an organization that you're enjoying being associated with or working for. But when you have that bigger sort of ennui of, boy, I just don't like something more broadly, and there's nothing specifically that I can contribute a fix to. I can highlight I can highlight this to my manager that I see this as an issue, but I'm not going to really be involved very much in the solution because that solution involves many more people. That's a tougher one, and probably one that you'll solve by leaving the organization. you'll solve it easier and faster by leaving the organization as opposed to kind of staying and fighting. Now, because remember, the organization culture and the processes have been put in place for a reason, and people have advocated for those and will defend those because those are, they built those because that's what they wanted to see. And so it gets a little more challenging to kind of trade those bigger picture issues than it is with the kind of specific problems that kind of bubble up. Have you been? How are you feeling about your? Have you felt these kind of? So you said you made a mistake and or that your practice made a mistake in overdosing a patient. Have you ever run into these the sense of things gone wrong and it's not really traceable to a single event or a single thing?
Yes.
Do you care to elaborate?
No, because this is for public consumption and I don't necessarily want my managers to listen to this.
All right, fair point. Yeah, so I've had situations like this too. And there are different, some you can wait out. Some are, sort of people specific, and management teams do change. An organization, even the biggest company, is quite dynamic. When I was working at Schwab, I had an employee who was very disillusioned with our management of our finance function, and she felt very strongly that she needed to leave because she didn't see her values reflected in the leadership of the function, even though the company values were very strong. The functional values were not. And so, I was trying to point out that, well, it's true that your values don't match with the current leadership of our finance function, but recognize that even, in the corporate world, those things aren't written in stone. And so I took out the annual report from 3 years prior and looked at the management committee, and there was probably 12 to 15 people from 3 years ago, and then looked at the management committee that was in place that day, and 2/3 of the people from 3 years ago were either gone from the company or in different roles. And so, in the course of 3 years, 60, 67, 65 to 70% of the senior leadership, these are the very top executives, had turned over. And so, basically what that says is that you're going to have about a 20% turnover in your senior ranks every year. And, some of that is going to, and that'll sort of reverberate throughout the organization. So, if you wait 2 or 3 years, you're probably going to be looking at a different leadership team than you have today. And unfortunately, she didn't feel that same way. So she left our company to our detriment, I think. But recognize that, when something goes wrong and it's this widespread, bigger issue, you kind of have to ask yourself, okay, is this going to be an ongoing issue, or is it going to be specific to the people who are making decisions right now? And will the people who replace those people make different decisions and bring back some of the better alignment to my values, goals, expectations, et cetera? And if the answer there is yes, then maybe it does make sense to give it a couple of years to see if it'll resolve itself positively. If not, in the case of my employee at Schwab, she was like, no, I can't wait 2 years. That would be too draining for me to work in a place for 2 years with the management team that we've got, with no guarantee that the people that would replace those people would really change it. And so those are, when you think about these bigger picture issues, these things that can be really challenging to fix. You're probably better off trying to find a different organization where there's a better match with what you want. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. You can always give it a little bit more time and hope that you'll be in the you'll have the opportunity that new management will come in and make things a little bit different. Smaller organizations, managers are able to change the culture much more effectively than in larger organizations. And so that's got to be part of your thinking too, that, if you're in a small organization and it is dynamic, you might get a new boss, that the chances of that boss being able to change culture is much higher than if you were in a large corporation where, that boss comes in, but has all of the sort of traditional and historical relationships and weights and culture that he or she has to deal with. So, something, just kind of bear that in mind. But I would say, generally speaking, you should, if it's If you feel like it's the company direction or the company organization that's wrong, you should probably find a new company or organization that'll be faster, cleaner, and and maybe better for you. But recognize that doesn't have to be the case all the time.
So in a situation where it's not an organizational issue and you can leave, how do you take stock of your own part in the issue?
Well, I think it's important to, whenever you're in a professional situation or even a personal situation, you just got to own your performance, good and bad. And if you're a capable, competent person and you're in the right role, you're going to get you're going to have many more good contributions than you'll have bad contributions. But everybody makes mistakes, and so when you talk about taking stock of, okay, something's gone wrong, what's my role in that? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're asking that, I think, the first step is to own your performance, own the outcomes, good and bad. And give yourself credit when things go well. And again, this kind of gets back to the beginning. You have successes. Make sure that you own those as much as you own the failures. You need to own the failures though. And because you can learn from those. And it's the right thing to do. If you screw up, you should raise your hand and say, you know what, I did that badly, or I didn't do that as well as I could have. Whatever is the more accurate statement, just own that, good and bad. And we talked earlier about the apology. If you've made a mistake, apologize to the people that affected. It doesn't cost you anything, and it builds tremendous goodwill. Because one of the things I think that's just true of people in general, and you can see it in kids all the time, is fairness and how important fairness is. And you want to outrage just about any child anywhere, make them think something's not fair, and that lasts all through adulthood too. How many times do we say, that just isn't fair that happens? And by owning your mistakes and apologizing for them, it goes a long way to mollifying that reaction that people have about fairness. It's not fair that you made a mistake and get away with it, right? I mean, that's another thing, right? You get away with something. No, if you recognize it, you've articulated, look, I did this, I own it, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the impact it had on you, and I'm sorry I made that mistake. That's kind of minimum. And just by doing that, it's going to put you on much better footing to go forward. I think the next thing you want to do is kind of do a little self-analysis, right? Okay, I made a mistake. Is that because I'm incapable of doing my job or this part of my job? In other words, is this likely to repeat? One of my things is phone calls. As you know, I despise making phone calls. If I was in a job that required me to make phone calls, I'd be screwed up all the time. And it wouldn't get better. It's not like I can train better. And I mean, might get marginally better because I just get a little bit more immune to it. But I really, really don't like, my first job out of college was making phone calls. It did not go well. I'd have days when I could do it, but there were way too many days where I was just like, get distracted. I wouldn't do it. I'd find other things to do so I wouldn't have to call people I didn't know. I mean, it was bad. So you need a bit of, you need to do a self-assessment to say, okay, I made this mistake. Is this a one-off, or is it likely to happen again because of who I am and what I know and what my experiences are? In other words, can I really be successful in this role? And is this mistake or is this error, is this problem a one-off thing or not? And if it's not, then the risk is high that I'll make a similar mistake going forward. That's important for me to know too, and to sort of recognize, okay, this position is not a good fit for me. I'm going to be making way too many mistakes, so I need to find a different one. On the other hand, if you feel like, I made this mistake and I made it because I didn't know stuff. How do I get to know stuff better? Ask for help. Again, this goes back to what we've been talking about through several of our episodes here, both in the workplace and out, is, people want to help you. Ask them for help if it'll make a difference in your performance. When you're looking at a problem, something that went wrong, analyze your own performance and say, okay, if you decide, I can do this job, but I need to do it better and I need help to be able to do it better, ask for that help. And similarly, if there was a screw up and it maybe wasn't your fault, it was somebody else's fault, ask yourself, can I help them get better by helping them? So it's the sort of the inverse of what we were just talking about. Ask for help when you need it, but at the same time, offer help if you think it can help somebody else's performance, if it can help somebody else become better at what they're doing, and you can avoid mistakes going forward because of that. So ask for help, offer help if you can. After you've kind of assessed, is this a one-off mistake, or am I at risk of repeating it going forward? And then finally recognize that, the issues will be solved. This won't suck forever. It's back to the perspective. When you take stock of your own self, in light of a mistake or something going wrong, you can say, okay, what did I do that was good? What did I do that was bad? I'm sorry for the stuff that I didn't do as well as I could have. Is this a one-off or not? If it's not, if it is a one-off, then, how can I keep it from happening again? And if I need help to do that, who can give me that help? If it wasn't, if I can help somebody else, offer that up, and then just sort of recognize, hey, you know what? We're going to get through this. We'll figure it out. It's not going to suck forever. And, we'll get there. And it's keeping that perspective, which is really important, because, when we feel bad about ourselves, there's an awful lot of bad things that follow. And, if we recognize, hey, look, we're not perfect people, and we will make mistakes, and we'll make mistakes in the workplace, and nobody wants that to happen. But, recognize that that's just, that's part of growth. And, again, it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning about that opportunity. This is an opportunity to test yourself. And if you fail this time, what can you do to set yourself up so that next time you'll have a better chance to succeed? And if you succeed this time, that's great. Take those learnings and understand it. You still don't want to have to repeat it. But, it can lead to a lot of good, good growth, good professional growth for going through these things. It's like personal growth. Some of the most important professional growth things that you can do are painful. There are things that you remember. There's scars that you'll carry, and that's not. I mean, it's a bad thing that you had the mistake, but if it helps you become a better employee, if it helps you become a higher functioning person, a higher functioning employee, then that's just the price you pay. That's something. And frankly, everybody's going to have those experiences. So don't take it personally. Just do what you can to fix it. And the things we've talked about already, fix it. Try to make sure it doesn't happen again. Make your changes so that it doesn't happen again, and then press on. So is that helpful?
It's very helpful. And my piece of advice in response to that is, remember, nothing died.
Nothing died. Exactly. Nothing died. Yeah. And therefore, it's not irreversible, right? No. Yeah. There's very few things in life that are irreversible. There are some, but
when something dies.
If something dies, right. That's about the only thing, or maimed. I mean, if you're maimed, that's irreversible, but that doesn't mean it can't be mitigated, even if it's irreversible. So there's very few mistakes, very few things that go wrong that can't be made right. And so we just got to do our best around that. So I think that's what we have for today.
Sure is.
Any research items that we need to?
Don't think so.
No guinea pigs that
Funny.
You did not ever bring snakes home, I don't think, did you?
I didn't. I personally could not keep snakes, not because of the snakes, but because they need to eat crickets.
Oh, right.
So I'd have to keep live crickets in my house.
Right.
No thanks.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you not bringing snakes home. That would have been bad.
There's a lot more than just like the snake in that situation. You got to get the heat lamp. You got to get all the stuff.
No, I guess that's true. They're cold-blooded, so yeah.
I did take care of a couple snakes, but it was always a drive to their place and deal with their snakes situation, less than a bring snake to my house situation.
Yeah, snake's not welcome here. That's for sure. Actually, a friend of mine's dog just got bit by a big rattlesnake up in the open space this week. So.
Ouch.
Do you guys don't get those? Do you get rattlesnake bites where you are, or snake bites where you are?
We haven't seen any. I don't even think we have rattlesnakes out here, but we do have copperheads. So.
Yeah, you don't have rattlesnakes, but you might have water moccasins and copperheads and other.
No, I know we have copperheads because I was talking to someone who lives out in the country who found one on her steps the other day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Very good. No swear words today. No Venmo. All right. Very good. What's our topic for next week, Ed? What are we going to be talking about next week?
Our topic next week is, when should I ask for a raise or a promotion?
Ah, very good. All right. I'm not going to be helpful for that. I don't think I've ever asked for either. So we'll have to lean on our internet research to do that. You, on the other hand, you have asked for a raise.
I have asked for a raise, and it was traumatizing. So
yeah.
well,
maybe, we'll hear more about that next week. So that sounds good.
All right. Well, in the meantime, you can find us on awkwardfamilyconversations.com, on Facebook at Awkward Family Conversations, and on Twitter at awkwardfamilyc1. And you can find us on YouTube for the full unedited video that's got a real cute Claire appearance today. And then just to listen to us, you can find us on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, or whatever you like to listen on. Let us know what you think. Keep the questions and suggestions coming in DMs, comments, or of course, personal text messages, or over FaceTime. Got a recent compliment over FaceTime the other day.
Did you?
I did. Olivia.
Oh, very nice. All right. Shout out to Olivia. Thank you,
Shout
Olivia.
out to Olivia. Yep.
Awesome. Right. Well, we'll look forward to talking to you next week about raises and promotion, Ed. In the meantime, take care, Angel. I love you.
I love you too, Dad.
All right. Bye-bye.